Printer can print up to 10 lines per second.
Welcome home, Columbia. Beautiful, beautiful.
This printer can print up to 10 lines per second. This printer can print up to 10 lines per second.
Okay, welcome to lesson 32, Slideshow. We're going to build a little slideshow, something you've seen a lot on the web. It'll look something like this. It has that last image is empty. That's why it's looks like that little square there. I did that on purpose. Okay, so that's what it looks like. This is what the code, that's not the code, this is the code. This is what the code's going to look like. Don't build anything yet. What I want you to do first is collect some images. So the way I would do that is, let's see, I'm going to get on Google and just pick some things you want to see, like animals maybe. Frog, PNG. Here's a frog. Let me grab this guy. Notice this grid, this white and gray grid. That means it's transparent in the back. I don't want transparent. A lot of times I use transparent because I think it looks really cool because you can put your own colored background behind it. But in this case, I want to do something different. Let me look at this guy right here. Okay, that does look transparent, but let me see what happens when I click and drag it over here. Okay, so what you want to do is you want your slides to be the same size. The slides in that little slide piece I did were 144 by 144 pixels. So I'm using something called Preview, which is built into every Mac. Super simple photo manipulation, not a sophisticated program at all. It doesn't really do much, but it will allow me to change the size. Resolution is 72. I have to unlock this if I want to get a square. It's going to distort it a little bit, but I don't really care for these purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. Close it. Okay, so you want to do that. Notice it's smaller. You want to do that for as many images as you want for your slideshow. I would say do a minimum of 3 just to get started. You can always, they're very easy to add later. So do 3 just to get your slideshow started, and 3 will allow you to see if it's working well. Okay, the next thing you want to do is you want to create an images folder, and this folder has to be in the same folder or on your desktop along with your .html file. That way your HTML file can find your images folder. They have to be in the same place. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let me open my images folder. I've got 4 images in there. I'm going to drag this frog into there. Notice it's got a completely different name. The names of my images before are very uniform. That's essential. Pick 1.png, pick 2.png, and so forth. I'm going to rename this to pick 5.png. Okay, so that's essential because the code needs to know the name of the file. We don't want a whole bunch of wacko different names. We want it to be uniform. So the only difference in these names is the number, and that's key. Okay, so do that. Get at least 3 pictures, more if you want. Make them the same size. Square's kind of cool to start with. You can always change this code later. You can always change your slides later. No big deal. This is just to get a start. Okay, so build your little slide. Excuse me, build your slides, put them in your images folder, and then start your Atom code file. I'm going to take this out. And when you save this, I would save it as slideshow.html. Again, make sure you save it where, not in your images folder, but in the same area as your images folder. So in other words, you could create a folder called Slideshow, then put your images folder in Slideshow, and put your .html file in that Slideshow folder as well. They have to be in the same folder or on the desktop together. Okay, so now I want you to build this code right here. And then after you're done, we will build a function called Slideshow. Okay, so now that you're back and you've got all this code in there and you've got your images folder all set up. Oh, by the way, first thing, notice this constant up here called num of pics. Well, make sure that number equals the number of pictures you have. I have 5 now. Okay, so whatever number you have, put that number in there. Okay, so let's build this function. And I will explain all this code after I'm done writing it. Okay, so I've got that function in there. Let me test it before I explain it. Let's make sure it works. Very nice. Now, if you notice that frog has a black background, that's because it's actually transparent, but the background in the HTML is black. Okay, so let's look at the code. Explain how that works. Some basic style there, basic CSS. Very simple HTML. We have an image tag, ID of slide, source equals, this is the key to the whole program. Source equals images / pic1.png. So what that is saying is go to the images folder and grab the file name pic1.png. That's our first image in our slideshow. Okay, so down to the script. So we're grabbing that slide element, which is the image element, and we are assigning a variable called slide. Here we declare the number of pics we're using, which is 5. I have 5. You may have a different number. Pic num equals 1. That just means we're starting with the first slide. Slide speed equals 1. That's going to be 1 second after we convert it. You may want more than 1 second. 1 second. I actually had mine set at 3 seconds. The only reason it's 1 right now is because when I showed you, I didn't want you to have to wait 3 seconds in between each slide, but 3 or 4 seconds is better for a slideshow. Maybe even longer. Okay, and down here we're just converting that slide speed into milliseconds, because remember, set timeout, which is what we're going to use to loop the slide, is in milliseconds. So we have to convert to milliseconds. So we multiply slide speed times 1,000, and that'll give us the number of milliseconds. Okay, now our slideshow, the main purpose here, and we're testing the picture number. We're saying if pic num is greater than the number of pics, then set pic num to 1. What does that say? Number of pics is 5 in this case. What we're saying is if pic num is greater than the number of pics, meaning are we on pic, let's say pic number is 6. 6 is greater than the number of pics, which is 5. That means we have to reset and go back to picture number 1, right? Because pic num can't be greater than the number of pics we have. Does that make sense? So we're looping our pictures. When we get to the last picture, we need to go back to the first picture. That's all that's doing. Okay, slide.source is saying what image do we want to put in that image tag in our HTML. We are actually changing the image source to insert into that HTML tag, that image tag. Okay, and that is changing, right? It's a slideshow, it's changing. So this quotes stuff here is we need to tell it the file name. What's the name of the file? Well, the name of the file is first images, that's the folder, /pic, and then the number. Remember we had pic 1, pic 2, pic 3, pic 4, etc. .png. So that is basically telling slide.source the name of the file, the name of the folder, and then the name of the file in that folder. That's what that's saying. And then we increment pic num. That's how we go to the next slide. Just if pic num was 1, and now it's 2. And set timeout just says go back and start the slideshow over, meaning start the whole logic over. We test again. So let's say we started at 1, pic number plus increments to 2. So now we go back up and it says if 2 is greater than 5, then go back to 1, set pic num to 1. Okay, so we keep going through each slide until we get to past the last slide, and then we reset to pic num equals 1, the first slide. Okay, and then this slideshow, that's just calling the slideshow to get it started. Once we call it, we only need to call it once because it loops on its own. Once we get into the slideshow function, set timeout will loop it, and it will just keep looping forever. Okay, that's how it works. Now, how could you customize it and make it more interesting? You could put a couple buttons underneath the slideshow. One might be pause. One might be reverse. So then you'd be subtracting. Instead of incrementing by 1, you'd be subtracting by 1. What else? Change the speed. That would be cool. Then you could do some stylistic stuff like changing the border size, border color, background color, stuff like that. So I think that's it. I think that's all I would play around with. Pretty simple program, but very effective, especially for a website. And it could be effective for like if you had an online business or something and you wanted to show your products in a slideshow. Or you could just set up a website and just show people pictures that you took. So it has a lot of purposes. Hope you had fun. Hope you learned a lot. See you next time.